listening to the 4 Questions with an Engineer podcast, the show that brings you bearing insights from CCTY Bearing. On this episode, we are discussing developing unique bearing designs with Corey Helgeson. Corey, what should OEMs look for in a design partner?
I'd say there's many things you need to look for, but it really all boils down to is you need a partner who's willing to try new things. And I say that because there's many engineers out there that are able to think outside the box. They could provide different ideas. You need management, quality, production. You need the whole team to be on board. Otherwise, it's never going to actually work. The manufacturing team needs the capability to quickly and efficiently change their production process because, many bearing companies will be set up not much ability to change their production lines or, work on new concepts because it's just made to produce a single bearing and produce millions of them. So you need the whole team to be involved. You also need the quality team to be able to be adaptive in the ways that they can verify new designs and verify the quality of new parts. And you need a full manufacturer that's able to do all this and keep the price at a low level. And then you need a manufacturing partner that's able to test parts in unique ways to be able to verify the design and really understand the whole process from start to finish. You need your design engineers to understand how the processes work because from the beginning of the design, they need to have that in mind. What can we do and what can we not do? So I really say it all boils down to, not just one person that's able to think outside the box. You need the whole company to be able to think outside the box and all willing to try new things and, work on new, unique designs. And it's really fun when everyone's on board.
What is the development process like for unique designs?
So the process usually always starts with some sort of problem, and it can be a variety of different things, but generally there's a problem and the OEM or whoever we're working with would like a way to solve it or some ideas. And I would say you kind of start out with not much constraints. Kind of just think of any way you could solve it. And then you got to narrow them down a little bit. So the first thing you can do is think of the production. Is there a way to efficiently produce this product? And, it depends the quantity, right? If it's a really high quantity, then you're a little stricter on the production. If it's a lower quantity, then you could be a little loose with what processes we'll use. But you have to look at your ideas and your designs and narrow out the ones that cannot be efficiently produced in some way. And then I think the next thing you could do to narrow them down is price. There's some ideas you can think of that will just be very expensive and very, very hard to secure the materials or produce the product. So the next thing you can look at is price. And then you kind of go from there. You can look at reliability. Is this something that would be reliable? And if we produced it in mass quantities, would it fit the application? And then you kind of deep dive into, any potential issues that there may be with the part, and you either develop a testing plan for it, do some FEA analysis. For me, I always like to prototype the part in some way. It helps a lot if you can have it in your hand and look at it and really get the mind going on, is this feasible or not? That's kind of the start of the process. And then I think once you get to that point, you can start working with the customer more and seeing if it would work for their application and go from there.
What are ways to facilitate the design process that are sometimes forgotten?
So for me, I think there's a couple things that are very helpful. One is just bouncing ideas back and forth with others. They don't need to be engineers. Just talking to someone with a different perspective than you can be really helpful to get a different point of view and maybe hear some opinions or something that may help you, or maybe they'll say something that's completely wrong, but it will lead you to think of something else that's completely right. So it really helps just to talk about it. And if you talk about something with someone, then it helps you understand it better too. If you can explain something to someone, then you really start thinking about the ins and outs of the design. So I think it's really helpful to bounce ideas back and forth with others and give it some time. I also think another thing that's important is, I'm guilty of this sometimes too, is you'll get a problem and you need a solution, and you'll sit down and you'll try to do it all at once and give it an hour, 2 hours. You just try to do it all at once and get it done. But a lot of times it's good to try for a little bit and understand the problem very well, get it in the back of your head, and sometimes just head on to something else, go about your day, go about your week, and a new idea or something might come up in the meantime that will bring you back to the solution. So I think those are two things that I think are forgotten, that you can't do it all at once, and it's good to talk with others and bounce ideas back and forth.
What are 3 things engineers should keep in mind when working with a bearing designer?
So 3 things to keep in mind. One, I would say a bearing design partner can really only be as good as you allow them to be. And what I mean by that is we only work off the information that we're given. So the more information we can get on the application and the surrounding components and the actual problem faced, the better solution will be. And I will say to make sure you choose a bearing supplier that's trusted by largest OEMs in the world when you're giving them information. The second thing I would say is bring them in as soon as you can. And even if you think a meeting or a design review, they aren't exactly needed, I would encourage you to involve them as much as you can, because sometimes a different perspective is helpful. And if you can understand the full application as a bearing design engineer, it makes it a lot easier to think of potential issues that you may face and give input on the surrounding components and the mating components, that if the mating components are set, it's a lot harder to make a unique solution than if you have some flexibility on the mating components in terms of shaft size, bore size, things like that. And a third thing I would say is provide your input as much as you can. Just as I say, a bearing expert can only provide as good a solution as the information they have. It's helpful for a bearing expert to get input from the manufacturer or the OEM to understand if they're going the right direction, if there's anything that ideas or ways to improve the design. Maybe there's something that would really improve the assembly process or something like that. So I would say it goes both ways in terms of providing input and feedback back and forth.
Thanks. This is good info. And that's all for this episode. Make sure to visit our website, cctybearing.com,